It's absolutely true. Until 85 or so, you will continue to improve if you're in a world-class athletic program. So recovering enough, you can really push yourself and push yourself to the right sport. When I say that I'm physiologically 25, I'm not kidding, because I've been able to train my HRV up.
This is the Home of Healthspan podcast, where we profile health and wellness role models, sharing their stories and the tools, practices, and routines they use to live a lively life.
Dr. Bob, it is a pleasure to have you here today on the Home of Healthspan. And before we jump into your very illustrious background, everything you've done and are doing today, how would you define yourself?
You know, I'm the ultimate sort of early adapter from grade school on, always looking for what is sort of the newest and most interesting thing. So as an example, after medical school, I founded the first overall sports science laboratory with biomechanics, all from MIT, and all this pulmonary physiology from MIT and Harvard for GH and Harvard for Olympic athletes. I ran 137 hospital emergency medicine group, and at the dawn of television medicine, I was picked up actually by Diane Sawyer for CBS This Morning, and then spent years on the Today Show and Dateline and whatnot, and still continue today doing television, which is fun. I mean, I love it, but I also love doing stuff. And so now I am the co-CEO of Health Tech Without Borders. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, and we've done the coolest stuff. I mean, we have Halo Vision. So from Mass General and Harvard, we can help with an operation in Ukraine. We built an AI bot to be able to help anybody on the front line, Ukraine or Africa, in terms of trauma. I have a small team, both at Dartmouth and Harvard College, that we're building these new Gen AX apps, both for humanitarian causes in terms of tracking people's biological age. So I guess I'm best defined as one of those annoying overachievers from high school who just never gave up, with the belief that, hey, it takes 10,000 hours to master something. So you finish 10,000 hours. What's next?
Yeah. And rather than annoying, I think it's one of those that it's what drives society forward too, right? If everybody just kind of plugged into what was already existing and showed up each day doing the same thing, we'd still be chiseling our sharp rocks to be able to cut things, right? Like we wouldn't have advanced.
Andrew, that's the most interesting point there. I actually wrote a book about this and participated in a New Yorker article. And the idea was that what drives humans forward is reward, the brain's biochemical reward system. So if you look at somebody that is a bus driver in London, there's no reward. I mean, life is terrible. You step up the conductor and, hey, how are you, mate? And they're running around and solving problems and stuff. They're a little higher up. And so I'm a huge believer that if you have a variety of activities, each one is rewarding. I speak 8 different languages. I'm recording a whole album with the Vienna Choir Boys in April. I'm recording my 6th symphony actually in Vienna in September. So I have a variety of different areas. I try to do 3 world championships in athletics every year, try to write a symphony every year, always trying to create new Gen X properties and whatnot, or really, really cool sort of innovation. So it's a little bit, I guess, like investing. That is, if you have 6 things going on, you can have a really terrible day in one thing and a great day in something else.
Portfolio approach, right?
It's a point. Yeah, right. I was at Yale Club a few years ago, and a wonderful friend of mine stopped me and he said, "What are you doing?" And of course, anytime someone goes, "What are you doing?" It's like, oh God,
where do I start? Where do I stop?
And you start saying all this stuff, and he kind of defined me because, Bob, you're living the portfolio lifestyle. And I said, thank you. This guy was chairman and CEO of Bristol Myers. I said, thank you. I finally have a way of explaining myself. Yeah. I lead a portfolio lifestyle.
And the reality is, and I want to get into some of the details, but I would say the reality is for every listener, they do as well. It's just, one, how varied is a portfolio, and are you proud of the investments you're making? So if your portfolio is 2 hours of Netflix a day versus helping humanity or writing a symphony or doing, like, do you feel good about the portfolio you created? And so you get the same 24 hours a day as anyone listening to this, as I do. So same as Bezos, same as Elon, same as Zuckerberg. It's what are you doing with that? What does your portfolio look like those 24 hours, those 7 days a week? And if you put it towards the right and meaningful things that drive you forward, you drive society forward.
Are you investing your time or are you spending your time?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Investing versus spending.
My 12-year-old, see that TV set behind here, my studio here? He comes down and does video games after school. And I always say, Alistair, are we investing our time or are we spending our time? Doesn't get me very far, but I make him do a half hour of writing every night. So we do that to try and
writing. Like journaling or creative writing or what?
Well, creative writing. He won math Olympiad for his school. So he's a math whiz, but he needs to improve his writing. So we're working on it.
Nice. Well, okay. So you mentioned you try to do 3 world championships a year in athletics. So I would love, that's how I initially got connected to you through Mike. He's like, oh, you need to talk to Dr. Bob. He's this endurance athlete, triathlete, all this. Do you mind saying how old you are?
Well, my biological age tracks out at 25.5.
Wow.
But if you stole my birth certificate, it would say 77.
Yeah. I mean, Brian Johnson has nothing on you. 25 or 77. Like he needs to come take some notes. Okay. So 77, but obviously 3 world championships a year, right? There are a lot of people like, oh, once I'm this age, I kind of check out. You're still driving for it. You're still at world championships competing. What does that look like? Like, what does a day-to-day, week-to-week, what does your movement routine and investment and part of your portfolio look like?
So, for instance, I race ski mountaineering racing. I went to the World Championships in January.
Is that skimo? Is that what skimo is?
Skimo,
yeah. Okay.
I've even got my. I should be wearing it. I've got my U.S. team jacket
cool.
here, complete with the little American flag here to go through European airports now.
Oh yeah, because they'll love that.
Yeah, so I do 2 or 3 hours every single day.
Before we jump off that, I don't know if everybody knows what skimo is because it's crazy endurance cardiovascular. Like, explain what skimo is, but with the skins and going up the mountains and then
So a lot of people have seen sort of, you're skinning up a mountain. And it started for me. I was going up these big clunky skis and I was getting passed by everybody. I was so frustrated. Then I get a lighter setup. And then one morning we all go up at like 4 a.m. It's like 5:30 getting to the top. And this guy runs by me like I'm standing still, Wolfie. And I go, hey, he goes, what? Give me the name of your ski shop. So I call these guys up. And it turned out I hadn't known that until then. They have these skimo skis. So they're tiny, tiny little skis, about 62 millimeters wide. You have a little skin on the bottom of it. And you run up the mountain. So it's like cross-country ski racing, and you can get a very long stride all the way up, or you can even skate up. Then you rip off the skins, and you go down. And the really good guys and girls, they're doing 65 miles an hour downhill on a ski that's about this
narrow.
I would say I ascend like a mountain lion, and I descend like a small whimpering child. So I did 1 World Championships in Austria a few years ago, another one, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it had snowed months. It was just hard as marble. And these guys were just passing me like it was a treat. It was unbelievably fast. But the competition, I love the competition. I did really well at the uphill part. They also have vertical races. So my philosophy of sports has always been, Andrew, find a new sport, get in early, win, and leave as soon as the good guys do. I mean, I did the early triathlons, the early Ironman, the early 500-mile bike races. The early skate skiing our team won the Canadian ski marathon twice, which is this 100-mile cross-country ski race in Canada. So I actually was a U.S. ski team physician, an Olympic physician, and used to travel with the cross-country team, had their lab, did their testing and whatnot. It always impressed me that even the silver medalist, Billy Koch, who I used to travel with, none of them ever talked about beating anybody. None of them ever talked about winning. We always looked at your physiology. What's your physiology? What's the best that you can do? And they were just very kind of happy and satisfied with whatever they did. And it's interesting because my 12-year-old, when he won the math Olympiad, he was in tears. And I go, what's wrong? He goes, Dad, I wanted Lyra to win it with me. He wanted to share it.
Share the
It just is so unbelievably cute. So I see all these sort of grizzled people out pumping at the gym, and they're so serious, and they're always posing and whatnot. And I just love this stuff. And win, lose, draw, whatever it is, crash. It's fun. I mean, I call competition the modern cocktail party. During COVID out here, when everybody else was locked up, we were allowed to go skin. And we just had a big, fun crowd. We go up and down every day and skin and dog. And anytime someone wants to have like a meeting about something, about a patient or science or the church or whatever it is, I go, meet with your skins. You get a long kind of climb up. And I've always done cross-country ski racing. I coached 6 years here for the grade school. And now my son is a very good cross-country skier.
That's right.
Loves the sport. And then I do stand-up surfing. So I was out in Nantucket a few years ago, and I'm on my stand-up paddleboard, and there's a coach out there, and he goes, "Your technique is terrible." I go, What? I didn't even know there was technique. He goes, "Yeah, they race these things." I go, "They do? When's the next race?" He goes, "It's next weekend in California." I go, "I'm going." So I go out to Dana Point, California, line up, and I think I fell off my board like 25 times before I even get over the start line because it's so tippy. And I worked at it, and then I went to the World Championships in Molokai. It's a 32-mile race with waves that can get up to 27-foot, cresting swells and whatnot. And you've got winds that go up to like 35 knots. I mean, just crazy waves. You have, 2 or 3 different swells, and you get ricochet and whatnot. I mean, it's the most miserable race in the world. It takes me like 7 hours or so to get across this 30-mile channel. And then when I get to the other end, every stroke I'm going, I'm never going to do this again. And I get to the other end, I finish, and I go, I wonder what board I'm going to use next year.
So you made a comment about early triathlons, early cross country, going into these things before they've gotten super competitive. And I'm kind of similar. I was on the U.S. national team for swimming, open water swimming, back before it was an Olympic sport. And so I could be top in the country, top in the world, doing that then, but then it became an Olympic sport. And it was people I trained with, right? It was a person I stayed with on my recruiting trip to USC, was the first US Olympian in 2008. And then 2012, it was a guy from my school, and it was my college coach. It was the US team coach for it. But if you look at the times they're going and they're holding, it's very different than when I was doing it before as an Olympic sport. So you kind of find it's easier to excel. There was an example, you talked about the 10,000 hour rule, and the research it came from, the guy talked about like how many numbers people could memorize. And he's like, the 10,000 hour rule is not really a thing, because if you go into a new sport or a new area that nobody's ever done before, it may only take 200 hours because you could be the master and the best in the world because nobody's ever done it before. And so they used to think no one could memorize numbers at more than a certain length. And they were at Carnegie Mellon doing some study. And so they just trained people to do it. And so like the first study participant set the world record until the second one learned from that and then set it. And by the end, like the 8th participant had set the world record that was 5 times longer than the first person. And so it just, the competition increases as you go forward, which is a interesting way to navigate life. So with the skimo, with the cross country, it's a lot of cardio, right? Like very good cardiovascular health. Do you do any strength training?
I do. Actually, one of my very first books was called Turning Back the Clock. And what I said there was starting at age 40 for men and women, you're losing, I think, like 8 to 10 pounds of muscle for men and 4 to 5 for women every decade. And so, a key part of staying young is doing strength training. So I go to gym as much as I can, but more in the off season, just because skimo is so much strength training. You're kind of pulling yourself up a mountain. And interesting, when I go to the gym, I find I'm just as strong as I had been when I was lifting regularly, just because there's so much to it. So I'm a big believer in the strength training as well. But I think the big thing, Andrew, is that most people I know that are really successful, even if they're in the billionaire class, right? Everything in their life is like Gulfstream class, right? I mean, best private jets, except for their fitness. And they're basically in a middle seat in the back of Spirit Airways. I mean, it is unbelievable unbelievable how poorly they do it, how little they do it, and how they skew all the metrics. I mean, I've got everything. I've got Whoop, I've got Garmin, I've got a continuous glucose monitor. I mean, I basically hacked myself to death, right? And so I'm a believer that it's only with elite class athletics that you're really getting younger. And the proof of it is, I'm sure you use these Whoop devices. My kids always kid me that I get up in the morning and won't talk to anybody until I sort of figure what my score today is. And, where you, as you know, get your recovery score every day. So mine's not very good. It's like
41%. Okay. 20. Yeah, I think I was 46% this morning. So we're in good company there.
Of course, the irony with Whoop is, so this guy, Will Ackman, is a friend of mine. I think had found a Whoop. The whole idea was recovery. So I had just come back from doing a world championship for cross-country skiing in Beitostølen, Norway. And it was so boring there that I actually learned Norwegian. Jeg har kommet fra Beitostølen til Stø. I came back and I was just fried. I mean, everything hurt. I just, was sick and coughing, miserable. So I called this coach up, John Spinney. I said, what do I do? And he goes, buy a Whoop. So I bought the Whoop. And at first it really worked. I mean, I take my really hard days. I back off. It was working perfectly. And then I had the great misfortune of finding that there was you could be on teams.
Oh, so you start competing with people.
And so there's teams, right? So I'm on this team. And if I'm not number one every day, at 10 o'clock at night, I'll go back and run up a couple of hills just so I'm number one. So I have to be number one every single day, right? And so I don't get any recovery at all. I completely fry myself.
Well, I guess that brings in the question of number one at what? Because the interesting thing when Will was starting it was he went and talked to a bunch of these pro athletes, trainers, right? And what is most useful for you? And a lot of it wasn't the exertion as much as we need to know how prepared they are the next day on exertion. How do we figure out where we can push them, when we need to rest? Because we need LeBron to be able to show up each night to play. We need Michael Phelps when he stands on the blocks at the Olympics, and two of their first paying 100 customers were Michael Phelps and LeBron James. We need to know how recovered they are. So it's this flip side to fitness. I actually was writing a blog post on this yesterday of there's no such thing really as overtraining, right? Like an average guy or girl is not going to train nearly as much as LeBron, right? So you're not overtrained, but you may be under-recovered for the amount of training you're doing. So it sounds like there was a time that you were factoring it in, but today you don't prioritize it as much. What is your sleep and recovery?
In truth, Andrew, I mean, I firmly believe that there's a wonderful cardiologist at Mass General who has his sports science practice. Actually, he's left there to work for the International Olympic Committee. And he said to me, Bob, you only have 2 good days a week. That's it. And you have to make those unbelievably good days. And so I still, in truth, do that. I still try to find 2 days where I completely crush myself. The trouble, though, is I love snow so much and ski so much. It's just like I can't ever do without a day. I'm supposed to take a rest day, so I'll go out easy, but I kind of can't do without it. So, I mean, I do use it. And I had a very interesting conversation. I talked to this coach, Hunter Allen, very good bike coach, coached a bunch of Tour de France athletes, my bike coach. And I said, okay, Hunter, I just hit 65. Just give it to me straight. I want to know, how am I going to start to fall apart? He goes, Bob, in a professional training program, you will improve every single year until you're 85. And he's right. Every year from 65 to 77, I was a little bit better, a little faster in the world championships, for SUP as an example, a little bit better scores. So it's absolutely true. Until 85 or so, you will continue to improve if you're in a world-class athletic program. So recovering enough, you can really push yourself and push yourself to the right sport. I now am coaching a bunch of people. We have them on a plant-based diet, and I have them hacked. I bought them Garmin's. I got them a continuous glucose monitor. I get their food logs every day. And what's interesting is, one of them is a professional boxer, and I've got him doing some walking and hiking. Why? Because he can't get his HRV up. Nobody can get their HRV up unless they're doing the aerobic exercise. And so what I find is that heart rate variability, which I'm sure you've covered a ton, is the best metric actually for how old you are physiologically. So when I started training with Whoop, I was probably like 20, which is probably my age. And now I can be 80 to 100 or more. So when I say that I'm physiologically 25, I'm not kidding, because I've been able to train my HRV up. So of all the things you can do in all the world, it's really max VO2 and HRV that I think are the very best metrics for how old you are physiologically. And I think that's what counts. All the rest of it's nonsense. How old are you physiologically? And so I'm training this group, and they're very excited. And the biggest thing I found with a continuous glucose monitor is they ruin their evenings. They're wrecked, right? And now I have them last meal at 5 o'clock, whole foods, grains, beans, some kind of combination, eat nothing all night long. And you look at their sleep scores and they pop. They go from 51 minutes of deep to 2.5 hours. They go from 47 minutes of REM to maybe 3 hours of REM. And their recovery, their HRV just goes up, like 5 points a week. It's just unbelievable.
And that's Brian Johnson, right? Like, he has the last meal at 11 a.m. and he says because of the sleep. And I mean, for me, when I go do a 5-day fast, it's the first day or two. I mean, my HRV will double on where it was before. Normally, I'm kind of in the 40s to 50, but I'll get up low 80s on the first and second nights of a fast. And I don't stop training, right? I might do a little less cardio, but I lift just as much, just as heavy those days. Can I ask on back to the portfolio approach? So you do the strength training, you do the cardiovascular. Do you think about the allocation? And you brought up VO2 max. And so do you deliberately train that? Do you do the Norwegian 4x4 or whatever it is to build out that VO2 max? Like, how do you think about your portfolio on the fitness side?
So I aim it all at VO2 max or HRV. Oh, that's my main goal. The strength is simply supportive. So in the off season, you probably know the singer Noah Kahn, who has the song "Stick Season" about Vermont, right?
Yeah.
So we have stick season and mud season. So that's when I really go crazy in terms of doing lots and lots of strength training. Otherwise, I'm just doing so much cardio that I really sort of unweight the portfolio. Sort of like everybody going into bonds now. I just throw my whole portfolio into the aerobic because I get so much strength out of the aerobic. And I think the most interesting thing about Schemo, Andrew, is that there's nothing like it on this earth in terms of strain. On the Whoop that the top score is like 21, right?
Right.
I'm 20-something every single day. Every single day I go out. It's unbelievable because it doesn't really hurt that much. And you distribute your load over every single muscle group for 2, 3, 4 hours, however long you go out.
Yeah, that's astounding. That's incredible. How about sleep? I mean, I think people will hear everything you do and continue to do and think, well, yeah, this guy must not sleep. But what do you think about sleep? How is your approach to sleep on the recovery side?
So until I met Will Ahmed and went down to Whoop World headquarters and started using it, I didn't pay any attention to it. I stayed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and get up. I just fried myself. And then I started looking at my sleep scores, which were terrible, and really started working on it. So I got the continuous glucose monitor, and I saw that, my glucose was up all night long, and I slept really, really badly. So the first thing I did is I started eating really early, like 5 or 6. I'm the cook in our house, so I cook for my fiance and our 12-year-old, and then I try to quit like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. And I do everything. This group, I'm coaching this group right now on sleep, right? And they don't think you could change it. Now, we were changing all kinds of metrics. We were looking at weight and the circumference of their waist and how much they exercise and what they take. And you know what? I said, what are you most interested in? Every single one said sleep was their number one metric.
Okay.
And so I found nutrition plays a big part there. I've always done the whole sleep hygiene thing. Room 68 degrees. It's black. It's quiet. I got an eye mask. I have earphones. And as a war correspondent, I'd be, the invasion of Iraq as an example. I'd be with Special Forces in Afghanistan. Or I'd be with warlords or pirates in Somalia. And I always had my Tempur-Pedic pillow and my Bose earphones and a mask. So no matter where I was, I always had, great sleep hygiene. So the sleep hygiene I'm a big believer in. And all the prep. I do yoga before I go to bed. So the sleep has made a huge difference in my HRV. And the interesting thing is, if you're competitive, ordinarily you wouldn't compete on sleep. Now I'm competing on sleep. And I have this group that I'm coaching here, all desperately, everybody wants to get to 2 hours of deep and 2 hours of REM. Now I've got some up to 3, so they love it. And then the interesting metric for me is I get up about 6:30, I take my 12-year-old to school, and I come back and I sit down, I play the Emperor on the piano, which is Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto, which is very difficult. Now, if I've had 2.5 hours of REM, it's flawless. If I've had 51 minutes of REM, there are a lot of bad notes there. No one's going to want to listen to it. And this is the same thing. I am the biggest believer in deep work. You get up, you have 4 hours, and I read this wonderful book about all the best composers, authors, poets, most successful people over the last 1,000 years. They all do the same thing. They get up, they have a coffee, they had some toast, and they work for 4 straight hours. And that's all you have. That's all anybody really has in terms of deep, deep work. So I sit down and I compose for 3 or 4 hours or code for 3 or 4 hours. No cell phone, no email, nothing. I sort of sip on my smoothie, which is kale and collard greens and spinach and berries and all kinds of stuff in it. And I think that's the most satisfying thing. You actually have a reward metric. You've had great sleep. Your HRV is up. You feel great. You feel rested. You feel unbelievable. And there's no greater reward in life than being able to sit down and be truly creative, to create a wonderful new symphony or be able to create some fantastic new Gen AI app that's going to benefit, people all over the developing world on the front lines of war. So that's the great reward, is it all aims towards something and it all really pays off.
Yeah, I do think that's a really relevant point to highlight, is the why behind the health. It's not for some random number that says you're 25.5. It's for the reward is what it feels like every day to wake up. So if you're an alcoholic and every day you wake up hungover, you think that's normal. That just feels normal. And I sincerely believe 80, 90% of people, they're waking up basically kind of hungover, like with the sugar, whatever it is in their body, and they think it's normal. Oh, I am achy, I creak, it's hard to get out of bed. That's just normal. And it doesn't have to be. There's a different way of living where you wake up and the reward isn't, I get to lay in bed for another 2 hours because I slept so poorly and I feel so terrible. It's, I get to go create and do this amazing thing because I'm bursting with good energy.
What drives me crazy is I was looking at I think it was Jamie Dimon. He said, "What do you?" Well, I get up at 5:30 and I read all the papers. It's like, well, it's grade school activity. Why don't you get up and program a new algorithm or think of some new thing there? These people that get up and, like the head of Apple does emails. I mean, why waste your time? Why not do something
at that time? Yeah,
really amazingly creative. So you feel really great about yourself and. In fact, it's very interesting because this group of people I'm coaching right now, we actually have some nutritional coaches on board, but I'll go to the nutritional coaches and I'll say, here's the CGM. I think they're evening, they're wrecked. Here are all these spikes I see here. I think it's positive. What is it? We'll really take them, we'll comb over them, we'll fix them. But the interesting, Andrew, is that, most people, when they see my exercise program, they go, that's insane. But I look at them and I go, no, you're insane. Why? Because you're basically sick. I mean, I have these people who are, they were pretty fit, right? They're pretty fit, recently good diet, but they have HRVs in the 20s. And I go, I just think that, 95% of Americans are walking around basically sick. And the statistics show that, that there's a Tufts University study showing that 93% of people in the United States are metabolically unfit or diseased or whatever you want to call it.
Diagnosable metabolic dysfunction. Yeah.
You fix all that. And the fact is that you can feel unbelievably, amazingly terrific all the time. I'm always so energetic and I always want to talk about everything and whatnot. They go, stop.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear about it. So I have my own, I have probably 20 various composers and music theory specialists, just really super bright that I, spend my day with. I'll be on them. I have these 4 very bright Harvard College students who are doing a cool program with Health Tech Without Borders for disasters to figure out how much food and water and stuff that they need. So it's just so rewarding because, a lot of people figure out, one year out of college, you're behind and you're never going to catch up again. But it's great to think that at this stage in life, you can still keep up or at least keep track intellectually, which is fun. As I said, this Moshe Bar wrote this wonderful paper on reward, that it basically you have all this stuff going in every day. There's some intellectual reward. You learn something new. You compose something new. You've written a new line of code that really rewards you.
You touched on the nutrition side with the smoothie you have in the morning, and then you were saying, I believe, plant-based for these people you're training. How do you think about nutrition, whether it's fasting, intermittent fasting, carnivore versus vegetarian versus whole food plant-based? Like, how do you kind of craft your portfolio of getting your macros, your micros?
It's so interesting because I'm doing this current program with two very good whole food plant-based doctors, right? And I come up with all those tool set and all these metrics that they kind of eschew, basically, right? I'm saying, no, look at this person. Look at their blood sugars all over the place. They're not sleeping all night. They're doing this, they're doing that. And, gradually you kind of win them over. But I'm just a big believer that, the metrics show it. I mean, my LDL cholesterol is probably 50, which is, I think, where it should be. My regular cholesterol is probably 85. My blood pressure is probably, 1/6/65. So I'm always very competitively looking at those health metrics as well as the performance metrics. And so, I'm basically a believer in whole food. I'm also a believer in really good fish that gives you the omega, 3 fatty acids like the line cod, fresh Alaskan salmon as an example. So, and with a 12-year-old, it's pretty hard to do a plant-based. You got to have some meat in there. So I try hard to stay pretty plant-based, but I simply look at the metrics. I mean, I have almost no red meat. I'll make them a hamburger once a month or something like that. But, I look at my sleep and I look at my HRV and I find, and with this group that I'm training right now, I find that the food really does kind of define your physiology. So I'm not, we had this very interesting discussion is that I was calling these people that it was a nutritional ideology. And I think that's a trap that people go, well, ideologically I kind of believe in this. And I sort of do. In other words, if you look at someone like Ethan Brown, who's the CEO of Beyond Meat, it's a great philosophy. I mean, the whole thing is that, with meat, you have all the methane and you have, the destruction of all those forests and whatnot, and destruction of the planet and whatnot. So I think it's a very good overall integrated process. You want to think of, you're kind of saving the world at the same time you're saving yourself. But I do, sort of want to just stick to the science. I mean, I work with this very good group, Health Tech Without Borders. It's under the umbrella of Harvard Health Initiatives. And my co-CEO is the vice chair of acute care at Massachusetts General Hospital. So, all day long I'm trading references. I always look at the very best references. Are they randomized controlled trials? Who did them? What kind of a journal was it? Who were the scientists and whatnot? So I'm always looking at the very, very highest, best quality data. And I feel people get so trapped by their ideology that they can't eat something or they can't do an exercise or they don't want to do something because they're ideologically stuck. And the same thing's true for me. I mean, having been in the news forever, I always believe that there can be a great story anywhere in the ideological spectrum. And if you're writing for one of the English newspapers, you can pick left, right, center, any place. Whereas, unfortunately, in the U.S., you're someplace in the spectrum and you kind of report everything from that ideology, which means you don't get the fun and joy of seeing what's interesting about that or, where they really kind of gone off the rails. So I just am very, very sort of, scientifically driven in terms of what works with nutrition. So I read it all the time. I try to stay pretty plant-based, but as I say, I don't mind some chicken or fish.
Yeah. And on that, do you supplement it all, like with creatine, with omega-3s? I know we connected through the Good Health team and the work you're doing there, but overall, are there things you load on top of your whole foods that you're doing?
Well, there's a wonderful exercise physiology scientist at the North Carolina Research Campus, biggest and best in the world. And a few years ago, he calls me and he goes, Bob. I go, what? you got to read this paper. You got to read it. So I open it up, and the number one metric really is all-cause death. If you can decrease all-cause death, you've won. Because whether you're talking about, decreasing the amount of chronic disease you have, or whatever it is, you don't die, you live longer, right? And so he showed that in Europe, those individuals who had the highest polyphenol intake were the people who lived the longest and best and had the least disease. Obviously, in blue zones and whatnot. But they measured all in what they called urinary phenolics. And those are the byproducts of polyphenols. So what we actually did is we took this product made by Good Health that has the highest amount of polyphenols of anything we know. So it has isoquercetin, bilberry, and the epicatins you have in green tea. And we just had a paper accepted for publication, and it's already been presented at the American College of Sports Medicine, showing that with this very high intake, we're able to decrease endothelial cell function. So this is the metric for people that I'm really in love with. Why? Because the test basically takes an artery, squeezes it down, and then unblocks it and see what it does. So if it's big and bouncy, there's much more blood going through it, then you're healthier. If it closes down, then you're at risk of a heart attack or a stroke. So with this, we had, I think, a 28% improvement in flow-mediated dilation. Very kind of technical term, but it basically means you have bigger, bouncier arteries. And it's something you can measure from 4 or 5 years of age. We actually did this in disadvantaged populations, Hispanic populations, and amazed to see that we'd actually improve this. So here's another example of how you can actually improve somebody's overall physiological age with a supplement. So I do those polyphenols, and then I have an East African coffee every morning because they have super high polyphenols in it. Okay. Studies show that with 4 to 5 cups of coffee a day, you have a 15% decrease in all-cause death for women or 10% for men. But with the polyphenols from fruits and vegetables that I get in my morning shake, or you can get in Good Health, it's 35% decrease in all-cause death. It's huge. But that's all I do. I don't do anything else.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, one of the ones that's been kind of taking everywhere by storm these days is creatine. They're saying, there's no downside. It's basically free. It's so cheap. And here are all the benefits. And they just keep finding new benefits on cognitive performance, especially for plant-based people, because you're not getting creatine from the meat sources. So I was curious if you supplemented with that. I just started upping my...
I did. Back in the 90s, I did some creatine and whatnot. I look at this stuff, but, I call a lot of it, it's sort of marketing alchemy, like all the NAD plus stuff and whatnot. It's like, all this stuff is biologically plausible, and it kills me because people come up and they think they're so smart and they have all these papers and they're fixing their mitochondria and whatnot, and all of it is theory, as opposed to having something that's actually been through a randomized controlled trial. And you are actually physiologically better. There are organs in your body that work better. Whether it's looking at HRV or it's looking at flow-mediated dilation, physiologically, you are younger and you are actually better. And as I said, I had this wonderful series of talks with Thor Grapel, who's the chief scientist at Altos, a longevity company in Cambridge, England. And, eventually they're going to have these longevity drugs. But if you've had a crippling stroke or you've had your third, heart attack or something, it's not doing a lot for you. It's not going to reverse all that. So I'm a believer that right now you can take and really turn back the clock in terms of your physiologically measured age. And then as or if this stuff comes along, you're going to be able to access it and will have much greater benefit out of it. And you'll be physiologically much younger.
Now, we talked about the physiological side. I mean, you're probably familiar with Ellen Langer's work on the mindset side of this. So, the early studies she did where she took people in their 60s or 70s, I can't remember, to these camps and had 2 separate. And one was just like the normal camp. And then the other, they had everything set up to what it would have been like when they were 12 or 13. And so it's the music playing, the stuff on the walls, everything. And on every marker, right? Self-reported pain, the activity level, everything. They just started acting like kids again. And it lasted for years afterwards. And so we, as a society, created this story of age and aging, that there is a physiological component, but it can't be divorced from the psychological component, I don't think, because the story you tell yourself, you make it true or not. And so for someone who gets up and is like, hey, I'm going to go compose a symphony. I'm going to go write some Gen AI new app. Do you have a mindset, a stress management practice, breathwork, meditation, anything that you're doing, manifestation, anything to keep cultivating that? Or is it just through the act of doing? You're like, hey, just by doing all this stuff, I have this amazing, energetic mindset.
Oh, so I have two hacks. So one is, Dean Ornish, who wrote all these wonderful books on the plant-based diet, took me aside once and said, Bob, look, you've got a great diet, you great exercise program, but if you don't do the meditation piece, it's all a waste. All my studies show you're not going to reverse coronary heart disease. You're not going to prevent prostate cancer. None of this stuff's going to happen. So then I went out, I spent a month at the Yoga College of India with Bikram Chaudhry. And I learned, every posture. And even during the invasion of Iraq, I was the 1st Marine Division. And I would get out every night. We'd take 3 M1A1 tanks. We'd surround ourselves. And I'd do a whole yoga thing. I do yoga every night before I go to bed. So one, I'm a huge believer in that. And then I'm also a big believer in Andrew Seligman, the whole idea of learned helplessness, that so many people have learned how to become helpless. And I tell my kids, I tell everybody I can, I go, you are responsible how you feel. It's not who you're with. It's not your company. Basically, you could have a good day in a Nazi prisoner of war camp. You can have a good day any place. So, fix
Go
it
read
yourself.
Man's Search for Meaning and tell me you can't.
That's exactly, because the spookiest scene from that book is he's in a train going through Vienna, a Nazi train going to the death, going to Auschwitz. And he's looking out through the bars and he can see his home in his old neighborhood. I mean, it's just so, spooky. And the things that happen were just so unbelievably terrible. And then the other thing, of course, having a 12-year-old helps a lot.
You have to be going. Yeah.
Last night I was helping them write, and they have all this code language I've never heard before. I'd have no exposure to that at all. So it's crazy, basically, living in a neighborhood with a lot of young kids here. So you basically, living with and competing with much, much younger people, I think makes a big difference as opposed to, sit around playing bouquet and, drinking whiskey.
The learned helplessness is an interesting one. So I don't know if people are familiar with the original studies, but they had dogs and they would shock them and they would have ones that could jump over the wall or they get shocked, or ones that they couldn't. Like it was, they stopped. And then they stopped the shocking, or they stopped where they could actually get over the wall. And the ones that had been unable to do it just sat there getting shocked. They didn't even try anymore. They had learned that, hey, me trying affects nothing. You couldn't really do that kind of study today because of animal cruelty. But Seligman, they updated those studies. And what they realized and found, it's not learned helplessness, it's learned agency. The directionality is different. And so your default will be, hey, I can't do anything about it. It's by doing something about it, you teach yourself you have the agency. And so this is where I think someone like you gets up, does the work. You're reinforcing these pathways of I do this. You're building evidence for your brain. So you're actually learning agency. And so it takes more proactive work than just avoiding learned helplessness. You need to learn the agency and actually do the work, is my understanding of the most recent literature on it.
I'd be listening to all these things whenever I doom scroll. When I do yoga, I do doom scroll. It'll be Bezos and Musk or somebody, or Altman. And I think the big thing is you want to do really hard stuff. People always kind of do intermediate level stuff. So I try to take the hardest stuff I can. So for instance, one of these Gen AI projects we're doing with these Harvard students, it's like, hey, find every field there is, any which way, because we can basically with the generative AI, take and put everything into the mix. And we have all these kind of guardrails in terms of guarding against hallucinations. They actually have a leaderboard now for hallucinations to see which Gen AI does the worst. But this student I have now that I'm working with at Harvard, he actually is part of a project that made a psychotherapist, kind of an AI bot psychotherapist. And it's about to be licensed by the FDA, and it's probably as good as many therapists. But I agree with you in terms of the learned helplessness, because anytime I send somebody to a psychiatrist, I go, well, what did you do? They go, we talked. I said, no, I'm going to call them up. They've got to spend some time with you, teaching you to have that agency, teaching you that you've got to be proactive. You have to believe in this. And the other thing, Andrew, is I teach my kids this all the time. I say, listen, whatever you're doing, you have to go full out. If you're completely unemployed, if you're getting no money from it at all, or if you're getting millions of dollars from it, you have to put in exactly the same effort. It has to be the reward of having a great job and just finishing this, regardless of whatever kind of monetary or positional rewards there would be. And then that way, you feel good about everything. Because otherwise, you'd be writing your symphony going, oh, I'll be making some living and starting a podcast or inventing a new supplement or something. You really have to enjoy every activity you're doing and do the very best that you can at it, with the reward being that you've done a great job and you got towards that 10,000 hour mark.
Yeah. That, to me, that's a beautiful place to close. Whatever you're doing, do a great job with it, right? It's, some people, I kind of push back on this. Well, that's such a position of privilege. And maybe it is, but also, what is the counter argument to it? Of, do you not want to tell yourself that? What is the benefit of saying the opposite to yourself in that situation? So hopefully anyone listening to this, just play both sides of, okay, well, that's a position of privilege. I couldn't tell myself that. And like, okay, we'll say the opposite. Is that serving you or not? And if it's not, this is your one life. So why wouldn't you go with the message of agency, the message of hope, the message of creation?
Oh, exactly. I totally agree. So I have a wonderful friend named Ricky Grogan. He was Harvard's top oarsman probably in history. He picked me up one day in Wellesley where I grew up. So we're going to go for a run. Drove me to Hopkinton. Without having run a step in 6 months, we ran the Boston Marathon cold. It was just crazy. So I took my kids to London and I had dinner with the Goring Hotel. I said, Ricky, what's your best advice to my kids? And he said, whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is. Go all in, give it everything you've got, and good things will happen. And I found when I was in high school, I worked at Howard Johnson's, which is a restaurant chain. And I started out as the dishwasher. And I made sure every spot was off every one of those dishes before the dishwasher. And then I went to the counter and I always made sure my counter was super clean to get the orders right. Then I went to shorter to cook, and finally full dinner cook, right? Without ever intention of going into the industry. But it's just like whatever you're doing, do as well as you can. When I was running my sports science lab up in Lake Placid for the Olympics, I didn't have a penny. So I had a little airplane and I go out and I do emergency room shifts for this company. And I worked really hard at it. 6 months later, they made me president of the company. So it's just, work really hard because great things are going to come. And then I had started the sports science laboratory, and they have this new broadcaster come by from ABC's Model to Sports. He kept blowing his lines. And they said, well, can you tell us what we're doing? I had no respect for television. So, yeah, we're doing this. So Roone Arledge, who was the head of ABC Sports at the time, looks at the tape and he goes, you belong in television, which is the beginning of my career. So you just have to have a bright, optimistic attitude, try really hard. And then you have to be continually renewing yourself. I'm like doing a series of courses on Udemy now on how you build APIs for these various large language models and which one and how you do it and whatnot. And I just think that, if you're continually reinventing yourself, at least you're continually amusing yourself, and maybe it will lead somewhere.
Yeah. Whatever you're doing, if you take one message from all this, whatever you're doing, do it to the absolute best of your ability and good things will happen. Be so good, they can't ignore you.
It's so true.
This was amazing. You are amazing. I can't thank you enough for the time today and sharing all of this with our listeners.
Thanks for all your inspiration and energy and interest.
Well, thank you so much.
Keep doing this, and we're going to see you anchoring the ABC Nightly News.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Home of Healthspan podcast. And remember, you can always find the products, practices, and routines mentioned by today's guests, as well as many other Healthspan role models on alively.com. Enjoy a lively day.